So today's question is a little bit different than what we've been doing in the past couple of episodes because this isn't really a question that would be a good way to start a conversation with someone you haven't met before. It is a question you can ask someone you've been getting to know over the course of a conversation, but leading with this question would sound a little strange. So the question, how do you like to start your day, is really talking about your morning. Let me give you a little bit of background. Right now, it's pretty popular in the American culture to be talking about your morning routine. So, since we're meeting in the morning, I thought it would be a great question to start talking about. I've also discovered over years of working with students that they love sharing their morning routines with each other. So, I thought it was a great way for us to kind of have an interesting conversation about your mornings and your days and talk about what's really important to you. So the reason, because morning routines are so important to other people, it's a great question to find out a little bit more about the person that you're interacting with. So this question, let's talk about it in a professional situation. Imagine you're getting your coffee or tea in the break room at your office and it's maybe the beginning of the day and you feel like you need to interact with your coworker, but you're not sure exactly what you would like to say. In this case, you can say something like, how do you like to start your day? Because this can either lead to them complaining that their days don't go as planned, or it can lead to them sharing more information about the way that they begin their morning. Of course, as people have children and they have families, they may have different responsibilities in the morning, but even still, a lot of people really are focusing on how they start their day. So you'll be surprised how much information this can give you about the person that you're talking to. So if we're starting our day with another person, you're in an office, right? You start working at exactly 9 a.m. or 8 a.m., depending on the office and the region of the country, then this question can be really interesting to kind of reach out to your coworker and say, well, yeah, here we are at work. How do you like to start your day? How do you prefer to start your day? How do you start your mornings? Some variation of this question. And this question is going to give you more information about them. For example, I always start my day with pretty much the same routine. I've experimented with different routines, but I like to do yoga and then I like to meditate and then I like to drink my tea every single morning and I like to have a nice breakfast. And that's really important to me because it helps relax me, put me in the right frame of mind to start working on my online business, interacting with you guys, working on videos for YouTube. So it puts me in the right frame of mind. So I make an effort to make sure every single day I start with this particular morning routine. So if you ask me, Kim, how do you like to start your day? And I say, well, I like to start my day by doing some yoga and I tell you a little bit more about my routine, you're going to have more things that you can ask me. You can ask me, hey, how long have you been doing yoga? What kind of yoga do you prefer? Do you practice yoga at home or do you practice in a studio? Already, the person has volunteered information that can give you the ability to ask more questions. So it's already more interesting. Maybe you're interested in yoga, or maybe you particularly like running. So somebody who goes for a run every day, you may not know this about your coworker. They might go for a run every morning. And so when you ask them about their day, they're going to give more information. You're going to learn about them. This is also interesting. You might find someone who really likes tea, really likes coffee. You can talk about that. There's this thing called bulletproof coffee that people are into right now, which is like butter and coffee. I don't really know. I don't drink coffee, but people like talking about their special diets. Maybe they always make a green smoothie or they always get juice at the local cafe near their house. So already you're going to get more details about the person. So this is a great question when you're talking with a coworker. The other reason it's a good question is it can lead, if the person doesn't want to tell you personal details like I just shared about my personal morning routine, the question, how do you like to start your day, is going to give the person an opportunity to talk about their morning routines at work. So maybe I personally don't like having meetings at 9 a.m. when I start my workday. I want to have meetings a little bit later because it can be overwhelming. The first thing you do when you walk into the office is to have a meeting. So the person might have a really productive morning routine that you can learn about if you ask them, how do you like to start your day? It is more likely you're going to ask the question, how do you like to start your day, to your coworkers when you are interacting in the morning. If you're at the end of the day, it might be a little bit strange to ask the question, how do you like to start the day, without having some sort of reason to be asking about the next day. Maybe at the very close of day, they might have a productivity routine where they make sure they make a to-do list for the next day. So they might want to tell you about that. How do you like to start your day? And they can say, well, at the end of the day, I make a list of all the tasks I didn't complete the day before and I move forward. So as you can see, it can be a pretty interesting question to ask another person. How do you like to start your day? How do you start your mornings? What's the best way to start a morning? You can really get some interesting questions. So guys, as I go through these examples in the video, I would love for you in the live chat to share some of your personal experiences with how do you like to start your day, and then we'll talk about the answers. So please feel free to go ahead and comment in the live chat. So we've talked about using how do you like to start your day as a question that you're going to ask a coworker, right, or a colleague. This is also interesting if you're in an academic setting, if you're in graduate school or even in a bachelor's program, or like I mentioned earlier, if you're studying at a language institute or you're studying in another environment like that. It can be really interesting to ask the person, how do you like to start your day at the beginning of the day? And I found that students love talking about their days because it reveals so much information about what's important to them. Like I said earlier, they might have some sort of exercise routine. They might have some sort of meditation or prayer that they want to talk about, journaling. Maybe they like creative things. They always make sure to do something creative in the morning. They may tell you about their favorite types of food, the food they always eat in the morning, which is, people love talking about food, and we'll talk about that in a future episode. So you can ask them to get information about them. And like some of the other questions we've talked about in other episodes, the question, how do you like to start your day, is a really good way to kind of engage the other person in telling you what they want to share. So if I'm asking you as we go through this live lesson, I'm asking you, how do you like to start your day? Whatever you share with me is going to give me some details about what's important to you. So it's a really great question to get to know somebody that you know a little bit, right? Like I said, I wouldn't just go up to a stranger at a cafe and be like, hi, where are you from? How do you like to start your day? That would probably sound a little funny, but you can use this question with somebody you've been talking to for a while. If you're on a date or something like that and you want to get to know the person a little bit better, an acquaintance, when you're kind of running out of things to say, or maybe you want to talk about your morning routine because you've been working on it. Like I mentioned, I've been working on trying different things. I tried reading first thing in the morning, writing first thing in the morning, so you can have a more interesting conversation about your morning routine. So I hope this is sparking some ideas for you guys. It's a really great way to get to know what's important to the other person. So let's talk a little bit about switching the question around and talking about what's important to you. So remember, when somebody asks you an open-ended question like this, an open-ended question is a question where you can lead the conversation in any direction you want. You want to think about your answer. So as I've mentioned in previous videos, thinking about your answer means thinking about how you want the conversation to go, how you want the other person to perceive you. And I've mentioned in the other videos in this series that you should go into each interaction with someone with a goal that you have for the interaction with them. Obviously, if a stranger talks to you in the bus stop, you may not enter the conversation with a goal, but you'll probably realize that, hey, this person's interesting, or this person seems a little off, like I don't want to talk to them. So you know how your response is going to be. So if someone is asking you these general conversation starters or questions to get to know you a little bit more, go deeper into knowing you, then you want to make sure your response enables them to keep learning about you. If you say to someone, if someone asks you, oh, well, here we are at work again, how do you like to start your day? And you're like, with more sleep, I like to hit snooze. And you kind of have this sarcastic or even negative tone to what you're saying, the conversation ends. So if somebody really is trying to learn something about you and they ask you a question like this or others that we'll talk about in this series, you want to come up with a way that you can get the person asking more questions. And hopefully as we go through and I look at the live chat, we'll be looking at different ways that you can go through this and be able to learn learn these different aspects and learn how to kind of keep a conversation going by asking more questions. Because if you answer the question, how do you like to start your day? I'll ask you more questions based on your response. So that's really important to keep in mind. Your response will guide the conversation. Maybe I don't feel like talking about meditation with someone because it's a more spiritual practice and we avoid that with people we don't know. But maybe I'll talk about yoga, or you will talk about running, or you'll talk about writing in your journal every day. Something that may be more neutral. It really depends on you and your comfort with the other person. So definitely keep that in mind. It's definitely dependent on how you feel about this other person. So I talked about how this is a question you can use with your coworkers, maybe your colleagues or your classmates. And then let's talk about this type of question with an acquaintance or a friend, especially if you're making small talk at a party or some sort of setting where the conversation has kind of gone away or died because the person, maybe you've talked about a topic for too long and nobody wants to talk about this. So you might just randomly be like, hey guys, I have this random question. I'm pretty fascinated with morning routines. How do you like to start your day? And you will be surprised that this will spark a much longer conversation, assuming your friends are interesting and willing to share information. So think about it. If you ask this question in a kind of lull or slow point in a conversation, you're going to start getting people really excited talking about what's important to them. Remember, as we talk about good conversation questions and asking better questions, it's all about questions that enable people to reveal something about them to you. As you know, a lot of these videos I talk about are about connecting in conversation. They're about finding a way to learn about the other person, to go beyond somebody who's learning the language to someone who's truly speaking it and being able to connect with other people. Perfection is not important. Getting people talking is what's really key. So this is a great question to ask in a situation where you're not sure what to talk about. People love talking about what's important to them. And your morning can start with any number of things. So people like to give you some advice on what's important to them as well. They also like to share their particular approaches, especially if they have a special diet or a special exercise routine. Maybe they don't have time in their day for anything because they have a family and they have responsibilities with work and a family and they're very busy. They may get up at 4 a.m. in order to make sure they can fit all of the things that are important to them at the beginning of their day. That's what some people do. So it's a really interesting question for that reason. So let's talk about, Trang actually had a great example because she shared that she was interested in, singing and dancing. So she's already giving more information that's going to keep the conversation going. So this is something that you want to keep in mind is whatever your response is, make sure it reveals a little bit about yourself. And that's something that sometimes can be a little uncomfortable to people who are not used to American culture where we tend to be more open, is that people are expecting you, if you're having a conversation and you want to continue the conversation, they're expecting you to reveal something personal about yourself. Obviously, you don't have to tell the whole story about your entire life and, your life story, where you're from, all that background, but you might want to give some information about things that are interesting to you that you're happy to talk about. So when you respond to that question, think about things you're willing to share, because some things are personal, some things may not be the best setting, because I probably wouldn't say that I pray every morning if I were at work, because we don't talk about religion in the workplace generally in the United States. So there's things that you want to consider as that culturally appropriate response. But anything that's about energy, food, talking about things that are productive and motivating, things that you do in order to have good routines, this is going to get the conversation going right away. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. So I'll see if you guys have any other comments. I don't see any other comments right now, but please go ahead and tell me, how do you like to start your day? Please go ahead in the comments. Trang gets the thumbs up and the gold star for today because she was the first person to respond. And I know you guys can answer this. You don't have to think about a complex answer, just give a few details. So why would I want to use this type of conversation question? What's the advantage to this type of conversation question versus asking something more about work or family or what do you do? Right? Every time I hear those questions, I get kind of like, Like, is somebody going to ask me? And actually, I thought about today talking about the question, where are you from or where do you live? And those questions make me feel heavy, right? They make me feel like, oh, like I have to tell my life story. So I suggest to you, if you're trying to have really good conversations in English, try to be more engaging, have more personality. Your questions don't have to necessarily be the ones I'm teaching, but ask a question that's going to reveal something about your interests, your desires, your motivation in the world, rather than a question that's kind of boring and routine, like the typical questions we've been talking about. Ask somebody a question that's going to enable them to share something interesting about themselves. That is, even if it's not like the most interesting, like the person says, I wake up in the morning, I brush my teeth, I have breakfast. You can at least ask more questions like, what do you eat for breakfast? Do you have the same thing for breakfast every day? So asking a question like this is much more likely to engage the other person in a conversation rather than asking the typical questions. I find a lot of times non-native speakers who are trying to start conversations, but they're not super comfortable with the culture yet, they often ask questions that are incredibly direct and questions that we wouldn't normally ask. So I mentioned in other videos and other resources that we don't generally ask about family right away, or we don't generally ask about ages right away, because these aren't appropriate questions for someone that you don't know. So when somebody is asking you something really personal, like, or even just like, how long have you been working at your job? Like, if they don't know you, you're kind of like, I don't want to tell you my whole resume and work history. But asking a question like, how do you start your day, is a question that's present right now at the moment, something that's related to what's important to them today. And that's why it's a really great question to ask. The other thing I would like to say about this is I mentioned that this isn't a question you would probably lead with. You wouldn't start a conversation with this. This would come later in a conversation when you've been sitting with someone for a while, you're at a dinner party, a party, some sort of interactive event. It wouldn't be like, hi, nice to meet you. How do you start your day? That would be weird. But it is a question you can use once you're further into the conversation, or if there's a pause or a lull in the conversation. This is probably not the most common interview question that you'll hear. You won't necessarily hear this in an interview, but people are starting to ask better interview questions than just, oh, tell me about your work history. Like, what brings you here? They're starting to ask questions that learn more about how you work, what your style of work is. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you're interacting with a coworker or somebody does ask this in a job interview, they're trying to learn more about your work style or your approach to work. So you might talk about how you start your day every single day with a list of your to-do list. You review the things, your main goals, you review your 10-year plan, right? A lot of things about goal setting is very popular right now. So you might want to talk about how you are organized by showing how you start your day, like how you approach your work day. So in the office, they might say, like, how do you like to start your work day? Or maybe they do have a meeting to kind of get everybody energetic and happy at 9 a.m. every morning. So you start off positively. Or you say, I always like to start with a cup of coffee in order to make sure I'm fully awake. You know, there's good ways to answer this question. So you've been able to see that this is an opportunity to get the person talking about what's important to them. And I hope my responses to your colleagues here live shows you that I'm already more interested in learning about the person based on their response. Their response could be like, I have to go to work early, and then you might ask about their work or something, or their response might help you talk more about being positive or talk about brain psychology. We started talking about evening routines. So there's a lot of directions a conversation can go when you ask this more interesting type of question. So I would love for you guys in the live chat to tell me, did this help you feel more confident asking more interesting questions in English? Do you feel like you might use this question in your next opportunity that you have with a native English speaker when you're having a more casual, friendly conversation, whether that's a colleague or someone that you meet or someone that you're interacting with? Tell me if this question helped you. For those of you that are watching the replay, be sure to answer the question below, because this will get a conversation going and it'll give you a chance to practice your English with me, and it'll give us a chance to get to know each other a little bit better. Wrap up by just reviewing that the question, how do you start your day, can have variations, right? right? How do you like to start your day? How do you prefer to start your day? How would you like to start your day if you had more time? How do you start your mornings? How do you have a morning routine? You can ask a variation of this question to really engage with the other person and give them a chance to come up with more things that they would like to say, right? So anything that will seem natural for you, you don't have to ask the question exactly how I asked the question. So that is exactly what I wanted you to understand, is that it don't have to be, with these questions we're talking about, you can definitely absolutely use variations on the question in order to come up with something that feels more natural for you. So don't worry about whether or not it's exactly the question that you want, exactly the way that I've said it, because how do you like to start your day is just one option. But once again, I'm Kim from EnglishWithKim.com. This was Conversations with Kim, episode number 4, and we talked about the question, how do you like to start your day? As a great conversation starter or a conversation reviver, if you're in the middle of a conversation, you want to change the subject. I hope you found this helpful. I thank all of you guys participating in the live chat. If you're watching the replay, be sure to comment below and tell me, how do you like to start your day? Because maybe that'll spark next week's live series. So thank you so much. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to share it with a friend. And I hope you will join me for another episode of Conversations with Kim. Remember, you can sign up to get email reminders by clicking the link that will be below this video. And that way you'll be sure to hear from me and you'll be part of my email community. And as always, if you haven't signed up for my free email course, Sound More Natural in Just 5 Days, sign up at soundmorenatural.com. That way you'll join my email community and you'll get my best resources delivered to your inbox. Thank you guys. It's so much fun to interact with you guys. Oh, you're so sweet. Trang says you're so enthusiastic and caring. Oh, heart to you guys. You guys are so sweet. Thank you guys for being here live. I'm glad it was helpful, and I'll talk to you again soon. Talk to you soon. Goodbye.